This is Louis Zumbaugh with Rush Hour Ag. Leave your message after the tone.
Hey Louis, it's Elliot Henderson. Can't wait to tell you about
rolling down the back road, truth riding with the dust, talking agriculture policy with people you can trust. From the field to the Capitol, we're breaking it down. Real talk, real issues from a real farm town. Every hour's rush hour when the work won't wait, so we're cutting through the noise and setting things straight.
What's your rush today, Elliot?
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Rush Hour Ag Podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Henderson.
And I'm your co-host, Louis Zumbaugh.
And we're in the legendary Farm for Profit studios here
In Slater, Iowa.
And, you were talking about being king here before we come on this episode. And I got thinking about it. Our guest today is probably one of the first ideas we had for a guest on our show.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, I mean,
I don't know what that has to do with being a king.
Well, you kind of get in your way, That's what you were talking about earlier.
I was just saying how the world would be so perfect if everybody thought like me.
Well,
I was just trying to point that out to you, Elliot.
Well, we'll see how that goes here. Maybe you can get me convinced. But
right.
Today's guest, we've got Emily Schmitt Sukup.
Thank you for inviting me on here
Yeah.
today.
You bet.
And this is an epic recording room. And do you know how many hats are on the wall?
Did you count them
Do
already?
you know for sure?
I do not know.
Well, there's 762.
Oh, that doesn't seem likely, but we can maybe doge that.
I don't have a clue, but since you verified that you had no idea, I thought I'd just go with it.
Figured maybe you always got the count of the jelly beans right in the jar or something.
Only if nobody knows the true number.
Well, Emily, you are the director of Doge in Iowa.
Yeah, it's an honor.
Well,
Now-
before we go there, though, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family's history and company.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, so Emily Schmitt, Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel of Sukup Manufacturing. So grew up in the business, just very dedicated to ag, like you said, but also was grown up in a family that always engaged civically, and think that's part of our contribution as citizens as well. But married to my high school sweetheart, he asked me to prom senior year, and then two wonderful daughters that remind me of myself a little bit too much every day. But great to be here and love talking about all of this that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So, grain bins has been the background, and probably one of the first civic involvements you had was maybe in the Branstad era.
Yeah, grain bins are obviously a key asset that farmers need to be able to take their grain to market. They need to condition it. Back when Grandpa started in 1963, it was just the first type of grain bins that were out there. And he did what any farmer does and jumped in the grain bin, which you're not supposed to do. And we really take heart of those stickers and all the warnings now. So I just imagine Grandma was outside yelling at him. But he jumped in, figured out how to stir it to aerate the corn to get the lower moisture so that you can store it. But nowadays you need a lot more than that. Bigger bins, bigger movement. How do you get it in and out? So when you talk about sales tax, our dealers were getting hit with inconsistent sales tax applications. And it was, this region said, this is, you got to tax the heaters, not the fans. Another one said, well, if they're together, a heater and a fan, then the fan can be tax-free too. So we jumped into action, got someone from Department of Revenue from New York, brought them in and just described this is the process that farmers do to bring their grain to market. After that, we were able to get the grain bins sales tax free, but also the Department of Revenue New York guy put up the exact bin site that we were describing. This is how you get grain through. He put it on his wall. So it was a win not just for our dealers to be able to have a simpler tax structure, but also educating New Yorkers on what ag life is.
Yeah, I know when I was in the Iowa House, we cleaned up some of them bills on just explaining or identifying what actually was tax exempt and what wasn't. I remember doing that especially the fans, because the fans were but the
Yeah,
the bin wasn't, or if you bought the fans separate, I think it was.
Yep.
You're
It was
talking about
confusing.
drying bins, probably. So the drying
That's
bin
what
thing
they
was
were
a different tax structure.
Yeah, they were honing in on just the drying part.
Yep.
But we had
Right.
to educate them. Fans still dry too, and it's a complicated process. If it's a fan is sales tax free exempt, only if it was a heater. So let's simplify it. So I think that's also, why we're here today too. Is manufacturers just try to simplify things, and we need to make businesses just like farmers' business a lot more efficient and simple.
So you've been well rooted in keeping things stupid and trying to figure out a more efficient way to go about operating government.
Yeah, well, we do it every day on the manufacturing floor. So when I was asked to serve as the state of Iowa chair for the Doge task force, one of the reporters that day was like, I don't know how to ask it, so I'm just going to say it. Why would you volunteer for this? And I said, come visit our factory. This is what we do every day. It doesn't mean that what we have is inefficient. We continue to optimize, refine, get better every day. And, Tom Brady still looks at game tape. He still has coaches.
Sure.
So if Tom Brady needs some of that, I'd say,
We do that in
anybody.
farming every year. We try to, you're maybe trying to farm more with less. Is what I call it. Whether it's less fuel, less chemical, less, and try to, you go through more acres with less equipment or the same size equipment. So
And
similar.
every day something changes. So
One thing, I just have to hit on this because what really was fascinating to me was when less counties came up. And ironically, the very first bill that I actually wrote when I was newly elected had to do with that. Only people weren't seeing the picture. I didn't express it quite, but it was township succession is what I called it. Where if you were a township next to a county and you were unhappy with your county, you could vote to change counties. And then but you had to be next to a county. So then the county next to you then would be next to the other county. And the idea was behind it, although it had some effect on eastern Iowa too, but I believe that people congregate. I live in the corner of 3 counties, but people congregate toward where they go to school or their business town.
yeah, that's definitely true.
So if you lived in southwest Iowa, which is probably one of the areas that could utilize some
Consolidation.
or to some sense. Anyhow, if you were always going to Creston and you lived here, but 6 miles away, they're always going to Red Oak, you could naturally split that county, and people would do it willingly,
Yeah.
just by where they sent their kids to school and where they shopped at. And people, you kind of start winning a few over. I know Representative Sexton thought I was crazy.
Well,
And actually, we can't be. He might
whether
be
you're
right.
crazy might be beyond this legislation, but
Okay, that's true. That's true. And anyhow, it was all kind of wasn't really going anywhere, but yet I'd get people to listen until Mike pointed out that it wasn't constitutional.
And that's the tough part. Like what you're talking about is the people movement, right? So we have geographic bounds, we have people movement, business, education, and there are so many maps that define different services and how they're deployed. Like what you're talking about, people are voting with their feet. They're going to Red Oak, they're going to Creston. So voting with your feet is one thing, but then, certain statutes are built on the geographic bounds. So they said the horse and buggy needs to be able to get it to a county seat and back. So that's how the size of the counties were figured out. I believe that we did have 100, but then 2 did consolidate. So Kossuth gets made fun of for making us not have 100, but it could be seen as like the OG county Doge by consolidating to 2. So
The one thing that I would be skeptical of, you have a lot of school consolidation, but at a certain point, it doesn't save any money because we may have one superintendent, but now you got 5 principals where you only had 1 principal. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So I think if this goes any further, somehow that has to be considered, because if you're doing it at cost savings, then you have to actually have cost savings.
Yeah, and education is 40% of our budget, and it is exactly what we need to invest in for our future, because we're talking about trying to evolve government, trying to evolve services to be there efficiently for our kids. So it all ties hand in hand, and Iowa has a high number of Iowa has a high number of community school districts out there because we do have so much rural schools. And for me, it's not just about spending the money and what budgeted there staying the same or cheaper. It's we need the rural schools still to be able to have French class, Spanish class, the offerings that other, more urban schools have, because, we're located in Sheffield, Iowa. 1,200 population, bring in 600 a day. And the first thing people ask is, do I have to work out of Sheffield? And we say proudly yes, but we've opened other offices in other more urban towns because we know that not all of the amenities are being kept up in rural, and we want to fight for that. We want that rural vitality.
That's true, but there's also, in my opinion, advantages of kids going to smaller schools. Sports, you get to play in every sport instead of, you get to the big schools, and if you're not really good, you're not playing.
Yeah, I don't know what that's like, but
Just playing sports, or to
to not playing because I wasn't good.
oh, you were good. Well, okay, I believe that. Yeah. Well, let me tell you.
That might be a stretch of my comment, more humor.
Yeah.
So does Doge, did they weigh in on, how we go about taxing or how we're taking care of these smaller school system? Was that something that came up in the Doge conversation?
So the first phase we just got through with, and that's the listening. So any Iowan was able to contribute.
Okay.
There was an online portal, submit ideas, walking around just at different events or meetings. People brought up the county thing everywhere we go. But there's not been a great solution yet. And so that's just one of the 3 subgroups. So one is leveraging IT, one is workforce and training, and then the return on investment is the subgroup that was talking about the county's portion of it.
So when you talk about Doge, one thing that really just come to mind, it's just really what you're doing really has nothing to do with what was going on with the federal government.
No,
I mean,
thankfully.
it's totally different. You're trying to enhance things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have a surplus at Iowa. We have, #1 state for millennial home ownership, which is important. And then #1 state for retirement. So we're dealing with a much positive situation. So we'll let the feds have to deal with that. But we get to refine on a much broader and more, positive growth and efficiencies. Just trying to get what we are already doing out there more efficient. So don't need to go in with any chainsaws here, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
That's an interesting fact there. #1 state for home ownership among millennials.
Yes.
So does some of that have to do with that we don't have the BlackRocks and this outside investment coming in to compete for buying these single family homes?
I think for the most part, cost of living is huge. We're having like the students that do stay here, the new employees that we get, they really look at the cost of living, but then also just the life. So you can, go to work, go to play, not be stuck in traffic forever. Might be behind a tractor a couple days in the fall and the spring, but really that quality of life, it's a balance. And we've seen, and IDA has done an amazing job with marketing and telling our story. People want to be able to go 2 hours just for a day trip, and that's what millennials have said in lots of surveys too. 2-hour half-day trips is what we want to do, and we want to own a home.
So in Iowa, we probably, we are not like Florida where the retiring class of people are moving into our state.
Mm-hmm.
Is the retiring class of people leaving our state making these homes more available for these millennials, or does that have a factor of it?
It's been a different, there's been different housing programs to be able to invest in growth of workforce housing, and so it's been targeted of a certain number of value of houses and below. So we've seen great investment there, and we've just workforce has been able to be successful in keeping some of these students, but we have to keep on working on it. It has to have a house built for you. It has to have the schools. It has to have the different amenities that they want. And I think Iowa's just done a really good job of investing the dollars, and whether it's the river or the trails, they've really focused on that.
TIF, do you get involved with like tax incremental financing? Is that something that you guys have
We've done it
wade into?
before.
Okay.
Haven't done it as much in the past, but I know it's used and very popular with a lot of different businesses out there, so that they can grow the town that they're in.
I watched your meeting a couple weeks ago,
Yeah,
and
one of one.
one meeting. I only watched the one, and I'll confess that I was in a tractor, so it
No,
wasn't
I love
coming in
that.
the best.
Yeah,
But you guys were talking about childcare. I know that's not. It's big with my kids because they have children, and I love my grandchildren, and I can send them home after I get them riled up. So but it's a difficult to find childcare. How does that figure into any of this?
yeah. Like I said, IEDA was focusing on workforce housing for the past couple of years, and in 2020, the governor had the Economic Recovery Advisory Board, which I was also able to serve on. And the number one priority that came out of that was address the childcare needs. So governor did what she always does, acted quickly. She formed a task force. She asked me to chair it, and 100 days, 51 meetings. We really put out the recommendations that could really propel and invest in the childcare crisis that was in Iowa, and we're really making strides, and a lot of money has been invested in that.
Okay. Does that money go toward companies or individuals or?
All of the above. So there's different programs. We built a childcare center in Sheffield, and there's the one of the key is businesses need to be partners.
Sure.
So you're paying a wage right now, but also you're seeing that the childcare costs are rising. The monthly childcare cost was more than the average of housing. Whether it was a rental, whether it was a mortgage payment, the childcare one was higher than that. And how are we supposed to grow a workforce and an industry that is needed for a workforce with those type of stats?
Something I'd seen when you're talking about childcare is that there was kind of a piece of this was kind of some of the administrative duties or responsibilities of a childcare provider. That this system, you worked with another organization to create a much simpler system for caregivers to document and maybe even like some of the billing or some of the administrative duties that aren't the thing that you really think about when you sign up to do childcare.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our gifts. Louis, you can take the grandkids for a little bit, and then let them go home. I absolutely admire those people that can take care of other people's kids for all day, and that is a key skill set. But we are seeing that the admin portion of it, which is different than a lot of times those skills of working with kids all day. We wanted to really help out with that. So if you think about a parent company that buys a subsidiary company, you usually take up some admin roles of that, whether it's payroll, whether oversight, legal, HR. And for this approach, it was taking that approach of, okay, we already have a background check system at the state level. We already have payroll at the state level. And then we went one step further and did a centralized HRIS system that child care providers could take part in. And because of it, it's been able to simplify not just their admin duties, but also the reporting and the support across the state. There's a map that a parent can pull up their phone. They can say that whether their kids are going to be in the next day or not, and then it'll update a live map online showing where the openings are for those providers on the system. Yes.
And this is part of that leveraging IT piece that Doge is doing.
Yeah,
in Iowa.
And we had a video that was done back in 2022. So preparing for that June meeting, I had the thought. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that what we're focusing and what's coming up for Doge, really, we already applied with the Child Care Task Force. So going back, and kid you not, the video was separated into 3 parts. And, I would love to take credit to say that we planned this, but it wasn't. The 3 parts in the video was really return on investment, leveraging IT, and getting workforce training. And this system nailed it on all 3 of those.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it's the people that carried it out that deserve the praise on that. HHS, there's Ryan, there's Janae. They all do a fantastic job. They're passionate about it, and just getting the resources to people that need it that already evolved the system, not to mention the cost savings of the ability to then be part of a system that you can leverage of the number of contracts with multiple different providers instead of just you as a provider paying a monthly fee for different softwares.
So when people hear that you're involved in this, or not necessarily just you, but that the state has this, does the general public understand what you're up to, or do most of them just think you're a slice and dicer because they see that on the on the world news,
Yeah.
and don't even really know what you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people have their views of what a Doge committee does. I think in Iowa, we always do it the Iowa way. So I think people just also understand that, hey, this is Iowa, and we're going to be common sense and practical. I was, honored to be the Congresswoman Hinson's guest for the State of the Union this past couple months ago, and I was nervous. Her crew is great, and we had like 13 or 14 press junkets that day, and just knowing the fever pitch about Doge in general, but it was so surprising. Everybody out there and most of the media, they seemed very, very, they had an appetite for a more wholesome Doge. And they had the questions, and they were asking what type of, initiatives we were looking into. And it almost inspired them to see that happening of, someone actually doing it that way that they're less criticism about, because we're just doing what we do at business every day. Continuous improvement, efficiencies, and applying it to government.
And Doge is a very Iowa thing, as I've recently learned here.
Oh, I love fun facts.
So Herbert Hoover, an Iowa, a great Iowan, was one of I like OG. I like your words, OG. One of the original gangsters of Doge.
Exactly, an OG of Doge. Herbert Hoover. I serve on their board of trustees, and so there's only like one of those Venn diagrams where like the center overlaps for just a little bit. I was someone involved in government, Doge, and then the Hoover trustee. So it's been fun spreading this word too, and you can take it for fun fact for parties. You'll be the guest that's most entertaining, because my hobbies are always entertaining.
Well, that'll be another episode.
Right. Episode. I think I'll
tune into the next episode.
It'll put you to sleep.
Emily's hobbies.
But an exciting one was back with Herbert Hoover. Even before he was president, he was Secretary of Commerce. So in the 20s, he put together a commission that then simplified things for industry. So how can we, and this is, how can we deploy services to best apply to business? And he's the reason why we have red and green stoplights, 2x4s, a gallon of milk, the different sizes for the plumbing in your walls, because they wanted to be able to have competition, but fair and more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, not just to mention that, President Truman and Eisenhower engaged him to be doing a Hoover Commission, which was about government efficiencies. So I think it's a very Iowa way of doing it, and there's still little Hoovers is what they call it for some states that adopted it at their state level too.
So what else have you hit on with your activities?
Yeah, I think that everybody's talking about AI. None of us fully understand it. I know one of our engineers, he calls it engineered intelligence, not artificial. But just learning how all of the different solutions that we're looking into as a business, we as a state, we're funding the state to be able to operate, but then we're not really expecting it to be efficient or streamlined. So I think AI and the technology group is doing great work of how can we apply it. It's a very common sense approach there. But then workforce training. So that's a huge part of the budget as well. And we need those tax dollars to go to programs for the people getting trained, the businesses that are engaging, and the people doing the training. So Reynolds Kramer is the lead on that for the Doge task force, and they've been diligent at looking at how this should be deployed, because government shouldn't be the biggest employer of Iowa. Should be using the tax dollars to steward to make sure that the businesses in Iowa can operate as best that they can.
You touch on training, and I'm going to repeat something I know I said before on an episode, but the saying, culture trumps strategy. There's a real focus on training, on trying to improve the education in the workforce. At what point, though, do we need to default back to culture? And we've seen a backslide of this work ethic, not just in Iowa, but everywhere. And AI is waiting in the wings to replace everybody that does not have a work ethic.
Yeah.
Do you see Doge or Iowa putting more of an effort on, protecting the working farms and ranches of Iowa in the future?
Well, I think it will take off some of the labor that is hard to recruit for. Okay. So when we deployed robots at Sukup, we've grown 2 to 3 times more in those areas and the product lines when we've deployed it, because the ones that were out there were doing the labor that is tougher, harder, just more strenuous, and so it made employees just more enjoyment of work and lessening the burdens on the jobs that they didn't want to do, because again, voting by your feet, we are getting a lot of turnover over some of those jobs and on the farm. I mean, we're going to be we have a limited release of our product Sync, which monitors the farm for you, and we see that there's multiple locations for farmers, and it's not just contiguous with their house anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So they need to be on top of it. They need to be checking in on their farm and their grain, and the monitoring and automation should help with that. But where it goes next, it's very interesting of how AI would be able to apply for that.
So, like for example, California agriculture, they've really got I don't know, it must be the way they have their laws already written in California. They're very against automating the agricultural workforce, or bringing in more autonomy to it. But they're willing to do it with Waymo and self-driving cars, but they want to restrict that in the ag sector.
Yeah, and it's interesting because John Deere has a lot of investment in sort of the Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. We've talked about at IADA that precision ag, Iowa is competing against California for being that ag tech state that is going to be the leader for it, and I think we're panning out to be. We're friendly. We actually have the most friendly driverless car statutes right now in Iowa, and because of the reach of the population being spread out, we need the automation to be able to really control the farm, control different employees' livelihoods, so to make their labor and everything just better for them as well.
I'm not sure how well that driverless car thing worked out during the riots. I guess they got where they were called to. They just didn't leave.
Yeah, I think there was some circling Iowa City for testing on that part. But I am excited. I want, whatever grocery store you have, Sheffield, Iowa, 1200. We don't have a grocery store. We don't have a restaurant open on Mondays. I want a driverless car delivering groceries to our residents to be able to then, there's no stoplights in Sheffield, so I feel like it's a good place to, test one out.
I have been to your factory to pick things up, and
pay for them. Right?
Well, and what?
And pay for them, right?
Well, I had to prepay, I think.
Good.
I think I came in from the east. I don't even know if I went through town, to be honest.
Oh yeah, you didn't then.
Yeah.
No,
I turned before I got there. And,
yep.
And I'm gonna test your memory.
Oh.
Well, because mine already failed. Are you familiar with Farm Bureau at all?
Yeah.
So who was the Farm Bureau president from Sheffield?
Ooh.
It was before Dean Kleckner. It was the one before him. That's okay if you don't. I think Dean was from Rudd, which is up there too, right?
Rudd is it's
up in that
there.
neck of the woods.
Yeah, and that means 40 minutes away. But yeah.
What would you say?
That means 40 minutes away.
What does
up there?
Up there means
up
40
there
minutes
by,
away.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that. I'll have to remember that one. That's good. Yeah. You got to be 50 miles to be an expert. So up there by is just short of being an expert.
Totally. Yeah, just short. Just short.
Get it. Well, I'll have to do a little research in my mind because.
Maybe like a buggy right away too, horse carriage, just like the counties, right?
Well, that's how it was started.
It was.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
up there is 40 minminutes. I'll remember that. So, Elliot, if I tell you that you're up there close, that means you're not an expert.
That's right. I think the viewers they already figured out that we must live within 50 miles.
Probably. Probably.
So, As we continue to automate more of this stuff, the self-driving car that's going to bring the groceries, currently people are doing that. They may not be doing that in Sheffield, but where they are doing it, we are probably going to replace them with this type of autonomy. Is there a concern or a voice out there that you're hearing that's, speaking against this, or,
We definitely hear it in manufacturing. We've heard it a lot too with robots, and we've nothing but grown with it. And I can't remember which podcast I was listening to, but this exact topic came up. And it was every time that we have, increased in our technology adoption, it's created more. In America, we don't just settle for what we have today, right? It's always, whether for it's good or the bad, we always go for more. And so our history shows us that even if it's going to be more efficient and streamlined, it's going to be that we're going to want to make more, we're going to do more, and it probably will change how services are deployed, just like 3D printing. It changed the way that engineers have to draft. So you think about additive when you're trying to design something on a 3D printer versus if you're trying to design on one of the mills that we have and you have to take away from material. So just those two differences is a different way of even building and designing products. So it's different, probably more streamlined. But in America, we always keep growing. So
it is scary though to think, what's all this labor going to do if it's replaced with autonomy?
Yeah, and it's something that the movies show us certain things.
Sure.
But in Iowa, we have a lot of open jobs that would love to fill more. But
well, like for instance, on our farm, we do have an autonomous tractor that mows on the sod farm right now.
Oh, awesome.
But those are the jobs that everybody wanted to do.
Yeah.
So now
I got fired from mowing.
Yeah.
My dad fired me.
He fired you.
Yeah. So
we send you to law school after that.
Yeah. No, it was a quarter-mile long lane, and we had my parents. They were so smart, and it was beautiful. They planted all the trees, and then half of it was evergreens. And I thought you just like mow curving around the evergreens, so I would just follow that, and then I just kept following that curve. Apparently that's not how you do it. So
How do you do?
well, you do the curve around and then you go over it halfway, so then it straightens it out, and then you just do straight lines. Yeah.
Well, I can see that.
Yeah. I think different.
That was prior to GPS, probably on your mower though.
Yes, I don't think I have any mowers with GPS.
He wanted it done a certain way.
Yeah.
Your way wasn't wrong. It just wasn't his way.
I like that. Yeah. So I was fired, but reallocating my time.
I'm really thinking that you did it on purpose because you were probably having fun.
I had my music and it was fine.
I thought you were going to tell me that you went around the trees in the same path every time, and that will take it actually takes the grass out.
Yeah.
I know that from experience.
Yeah, the evergreens, there's no way getting through it. I'd probably get knocked off.
Right. Oh, they're that tight.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. They're growing evergreens.
Sorry, back to your original question. Mowing, people wanted to mow. I got fired from it. Taking it back. So is that something that you think, looking at the millennial generation, so these are the ones that are different for what they want to do, and again, voting with feet. What do you see that is different, but is a positive for growing this next generation of workers? So you say people want to do the mowing. What do you see that millennials like doing that it's different than we have today?
Well, we're an ag state, so I guess as this autonomy comes online, and I don't know if we've talked about it before on this show, but in 1890, 1 out of 10 people were farriers in the state. So those people were shoeing horses and taking care of horses in 1890. Well, today, Iowa's farmers are majority tenant farmers. They might own ground, but they're likely renting ground somewhere else, and they're a tenant to some aspect. As this autonomy comes online, and it gives landowners an option to now be farmers and operate an autonomous platform, will we replace farming as we know it with the ability for landowners to just get rid of the middleman farmer, tenant farmer?
Well, I think it's so built into our culture, especially in Iowa, that farmers, I call them the OG environmentalists. So no matter if you're renting it or further away, you are intentionally taking steps to really make the earth, the planting, anything around it as conducive to build that crop. So it's not just a rent check. You're also making those decisions based on what the earth is, how you're gonna, what are you gonna plant this year, and so you have to be invested in farming. And I think that's a little bit different than maybe other
So
industries.
let me share this with you, and this might be an example that might enlighten you where my mind's at with it. So in Buchanan County now we've got 27,000 acres owned by people that don't live in the state of Iowa. If within a few years we incentivize or those folks figure out that, well, geez, I can live in California or Phoenix or Utah and farm this land in Iowa, and I don't have to be there physically. I don't have to employ anybody there physically, and autonomy will take care of it all. That's going to be a real burden on our society here in Iowa. Is Doge thinking kind of over that horizon?
No, that gets in policy making, whereas this this task force is just looking at what efficiencies can be gained through technology to then enable businesses to survive and thrive. So it's how can we make the government work for the businesses and the people that actually fund it. But to the point that you're bringing up, there has been, I think it was Nikki Haley during the presidential campaign that she had put forth that, no foreign land ownership, especially in the ag world, because they know, I think two big things in our industry right now is independence for the food chain. We don't want to be relying on anybody else, and I think we're very lucky to be in the food chain, the stream of that. So I think we need to make sure we're independent on food chain and as independent as we can on energy. And so some of the policies, and I'm pretty sure it was Nikki that put forth that let's stop foreign ownership for our ag land. So, there's policy efforts out there that have already been trying to,
which maybe you're not aware of it, but Iowa since 1983 has had law against foreign ownership of ag land in Iowa.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're one of the rare states.
It doesn't always happen that way.
Well, I don't know if there's really a mechanism that polices it like it was intended. So there is a little bit of abuse in that right now, but Iowa has had laws on the books since '83.
Oh, wow.
That's made it illegal for, which if you travel the country and you see some of these other states, there's a lot of land owned by Europeans and the Chinese, where I know Wisconsin now is getting kind of inundated with some, I think maybe they might be immigrants to the country buying up land that's owned by Chinese. But go to Georgia, there's a lot of Germans that own land in Georgia, Great Britain.
So is that something that, okay, so Iowa has the right approach from your standpoint. Are you going to then go to the states around us? Is that something for, okay, to help protect Iowa from it, we should probably go to our border states? Is that something that, like, you'd go to the Capitol to engage in your civic duty if you're concerned about it?
Out of state absentee land ownership you're talking about?
Just making sure that they have those laws too, like no foreign ownership for ag.
She's saying just because Iowa has it, all right, Iowa has it, so I'm going to take I can't buy land in Iowa, so I'm going to go buy it in Nebraska.
Do we want to protect our edges?
But that'd be up to them, I guess.
Right. And it's the point where if you're concerned about the, out-of-staters, et cetera, owning in-state, are you going to then take the steps not just to have the right policy in Iowa, but actually go to the other states around us, because
But they might be looking for. They might not be concerned with that because they might not have such a robust economy. They're willing to take anybody.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I was always big on. I'm not big on property tax. I'm big on sales tax because, and I don't believe that sales tax is unfair if you do it correctly. It's as far as how much money you make in a year. Just and I often talk about cowboy boots because I happen to like them. So if you want to wear $1,000 Tony Lamas, you're going to pay this, and if you don't want to pay that much sales tax, then go buy a pair of lesser cost boots. And it's kind of the same type of thing with that would eliminate property taxes, but the border counties of our border districts, because this is a state house of the surrounding states, are real concerned about that because they don't want people going to. If you live down in Missouri, well, they're just going to go to Missouri to buy everything then, or South Dakota or whatever. However, I think we already have that with income tax. I'm sure there's people that live on the western part of the state that probably chose to go to South Dakota. Doesn't have any income tax,
No,
correct?
no, they don't have
So they
income
may
tax.
choose to do that on
Mhm.
their own.
Yeah, yeah, and then it's sort of how much to heart do you want to carry that out?
Well,
That's where.
I struggle with this sales tax thing, and we've talked about it a little bit. It's like as we continue to see more and more of this land owned by people that don't live here, well, now all that margin is now leaving Iowa in the form of rent checks.
Mhm.
So not only do I have to carry, I have to carry a bigger load then to support my community through sales tax. So the money I'm going to spend locally, I'm bearing all the burden, and the property owners that live here are paying low property taxes, and it's not supporting my local infrastructure and economy and schools and hospitals and services. So I struggle with how that's going to work.
And how does it evolve with the changings? Because each year land ownership might change, and it's going to be changing in the different towns. And with all the rural towns that are small, it makes a huge difference, which could change it just by a year. So I think that's where I was talking about, offensively trying to protect around Iowa. So to your point, the border states that the border counties along the state divides, they get to see that. So if we take that away, it's more consistent, so that there isn't voting with their feet going across the borders.
And we have that on bills just in Iowa, and I-35 is a big dividing point. If you take out the Des Moines area, it's far more red to the west than it is to the east. We just have a lot more people. We have larger towns and more people in the east. We're both from eastern Iowa.
Okay.
And so.
And I'm not an expert on property versus sales tax either, but it's definitely going to be really a beast to try to get through. But then
I differ with you on that, because you are more than 50 miles from home.
So I must be an expert.
You're an expert on everything. Yeah. No, I just think property tax is a big talking point in Iowa, and I think it should be. And I'm actually glad they didn't do anything this year. As a supervisor, they had things done last year, and I'm a kind of believer, if you don't know what to do, sometimes you're better off not to do anything at all.
Yeah.
And it gives them a year to really, if they do it, to maybe come up with a task force to look into different things they could do.
Yeah, I think in the past 6 years, assessments, the value of the assessments have gone up 27%. And then the actual values, the tax collected, up 22%. So yeah, we heard from all around Iowa that property taxes is something that's concerning for, how fast it's increasing. And, there have been efforts in the return on investment subgroup of just addressing what type of efficiencies could we gain by simplifying different efforts. And but we definitely have heard from Iowans that is something that definitely is going to be addressed.
Well, I can see that as a direct reflection on continuing to see this land sold to people that don't live here, and the margins that land makes continues to get exported out of the state, and those dollars aren't here anymore to be spent to keep our economy going.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to have to continue to keep raising property taxes to pay for these services. And I don't think sales tax is going to fix that. I think we're going to have to do something to address why we have, every year we see less and less people that live here owning ag land. And I could totally see someday where we have a program that rewards local operator ownership of land, so that money continues to stay here and that margin continues to get delivered to Main Street instead of sent in the mail as a form of a rent check to some absentee landowner.
Yeah, and again, I've talked about rural vitality. We need to make sure that residents aren't just fleeing from the rural counties. So it takes like a holistic approach, right? So to be able to have people that want to own land in those counties, we have to have the amenities. And if we have the amenities, we have to have housing. And if we have housing, then maybe we can get some more employees to move into it. So I don't think any of us think it's going to be simple to do that, but you know how exciting my hobbies are. I'm just trying to think of what research I'll be doing to try and think about and following up. Maybe it's another show that we show the cards that we researched on, but that type of situation is so complex. Because, like I said, amenities, housing, you got to have people that want to stay here, and that is a huge deal. We want to train, we want to educate, we want them getting jobs here, so we have to take efforts on all fronts.
If you don't want to answer this, I totally understand.
That's always great lead-in.
I know. Well, it gets me. I don't even.
It's a blood pumping.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna. Your own company. You're in a small town.
Yep.
It's. You probably have you depleted the workforce in that area. I mean, it's probably gets harder and harder to find new people as people retire.
Yeah. We've saturated. We used to say we're at like a 9-county reach. Now we're probably over 13 or 14 just for the North Iowa.
Right.
And we've grown regionally. So Sheffield, Iowa, population 1,200. We finally, put up what we call the last building on our contiguous land ownership for manufacturing. We call the East Coast because our west building, and we just, between the two, this is far east we were going to build because we do feel like it's very saturated, but there could always be improvements for transportation. I know other businesses, and we've looked into it, taking the regional transits and saying, hey, because millennials, we don't like to drive. And we'd rather, if it's not me driving and I can stare at my phone, then I'm fine with a 20-minute drive to Sheffield. So we've looked into, ride shares or maybe the regional transits. That would definitely change it. And like I said, if we can get that autonomous grocery delivery coming from maybe the care center's kitchen and they make some lasagna and deliver it that way too. I mean, there's so many ways that innovation could really put that lifeblood in there to bring amenities back. But we've also shown that we've invested in the community. So we doubled our size in Manly, which is right on a rail facility. So cars come in, take off coils for us, and worked with our suppliers to be able to pull it when we need for the stock. We opened up a Clear Lake plant, hoped to get 35 dryers through in 1 year. We did over 100. And then
You've already answered the question I was going to come up with. You're answering it without me asking it. So
I was reading your mind.
Was it? You're good at it.
Yeah.
You're good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you've expanded to other areas or at what point do you have to look at that?
Yeah, and we're just moving into a bigger office in Ames too.
Okay.
So we're going to be able to 4,600 square feet. Now it's a much larger building that we're not occupying the whole thing right now. It's 35,000, but it has high bay space. So we're looking at, hopefully this limited release of sink it goes really, really well like we expect it, and we can fill up the building and start making products in Ames too.
So most of your components that go into grain bin, you probably make yourselves.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. People who take tours of Sukup, they really see raw material to processing to putting together and on the trucks. So definitely a full service manufacturer.
And electronics.
Yeah.
Also.
Yep. We have a great electronics for. We were the first ones that have a control system for dryers. So now you have something in your pocket that you can text your dryer and it'll text you back. Put what moisture set you want, and with sync you'll be able to be monitoring the temperature and other aspects of what's in your bins as well.
Yeah, no matter how old of dryer you have or new,
we can retrofit.
I know you can retrofit, but they all run the same way. It's temperature and time.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It doesn't matter what you're drying with.
Mm-hmm. Well, ours does it better, but yeah.
I have no doubt that you have a very good dryer.
Because it's more than 50 miles away from home. That's
No, I think they have good products. My brother has a Sukup dryer and likes it.
And ours, efficiency-wise, if that's the theme here, it is the most efficient dryer for mixed flow dryers. So
really cool, nice.
Nice.
On a little more personal note, so you're obviously Sukup manufacturing. You're big in agriculture. You have the Sukup section at the Jack Trice.
We do love Iowa State a lot.
But you went to Iowa.
I did.
So are you a house divided, or you?
No.
No, you're firmly in the Iowa State.
Yes. Yeah, went to law school at Iowa. Iowa State didn't have a law school, so wanted to stay in state because love Iowa, love being close to family. My husband and I, every single immediate family member except like one lives in Clear Lake for both of our sides.
Really?
Yeah, we have like 9 Christmases. It's great.
9 Christmases.
9, yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Good problem to have though. Is lots of family, but yeah, that's something that Dad always said: never say never. that he has a kid that has a U of I degree.
Yeah.
I just said I'm glad the honor cords were just yellow and not black and yellow, so I was able to keep them. So
We're house divided from several times in our family. We have Buena Vista Beavers, we have Wartburg Knights, we have Mustangs from Mount Mercy, and an Iowa State Cyclone.
very
And
diverse.
in-law, and with the boys they're bringing in, we have a Hawkeye, and yeah, we're diverse.
Yeah. Well, and I love University of Iowa as well. Their hospitals we
Oh,
worked
yeah.
a lot with, and
Yep.
my daughter had surgery there, and it takes two. You can't have a rivalry with just one team.
I was just looking at a selfish note, thinking maybe I could get a box seat in the secret section down at the Hawkeye. But
No, I think we're pretty firm in Iowa State, but politicians, right? All you can do is ask, and all it could happen is they say no.
no, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. You gotta have the ask. Well, we certainly thank you for coming today.
Yeah,
That
thank you
was
for having
great
me.
to have you. It's great to learn about Doge and how it's enhancing cost efficiencies in the state of Iowa. And our times kind of came up, but we appreciate it. And Elliot, we'll see you next time. And I hope the listening people can't wait to rush into the next episode. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.